I'm keen to find out more about some of the thorny issues that are really holding back the energy transition in Scotland. So let's go and find out about somebody who'll tell us all about them. Morag, the Scottish Renewables Offshore Wind Conference and Exhibition this year has been incredible.
Yes.
And some really interesting takeaways from the conference, right?
Yes, so some really interesting takeaways. First up, you can just see how busy it is. So the level of interest and excitement around the Scottish offshore wind sector, still growing, still there, still very vibrant. But some challenges that we're going to need to wrestle with, particularly in the policy space. So grid, you'll hear that repeated again and again throughout the sessions. No equivalent of the onshore grid, offshore. It all needs to be built. Real anxieties about whether or not that's going to happen fast enough, how it will all work, how it will all be paid for. So that's a real topic of conversation. The other key one here is around the sectoral marine plan and how we're going forward with that, particularly around the biodiversity side of things. So everybody has to do a habitats regulation assessment, but the guidance around that isn't quite in place yet. So there's a little bit of uncertainty. People want to get going with that work, but not quite sure what target they're aiming at.
Gosh, there's some really big issues there, aren't there? Because at the end of the day, an offshore wind farm, no matter how big it is, if it can't get grid, then it doesn't get any revenue.
Yes, so again, there's a question mark there, but you'll start to hear about hydrogen and power to X talked about very much in this space as well. So people are looking at that grid issue. They know it will come in time, but again, in the business model, starting to look at, there might be a gap between when we want to commission and when grid will be available. Are there alternative solutions happening there? So this again is a real emergent conversation that we're seeing in this space.
And you mentioned biodiversity and habitat assessments and so on. Who's driving that regulation? Is that a Scottish devolved matter or is that a UK matter?
So that's a really interesting dynamic we've got going on there. So we've got DEFRA down in England. They're looking at setting the regulations there, and Crown Estate Scotland and Marine Scotland want to align in Scotland. The issue particularly with that is if you sit on the dividing line between 12 nautical miles offshore, if you're in Scotland, the Scottish regime would operate within 12 nautical miles. If you're outside 12 nautical miles, it can be the different regime. So if your project spans the two, you could be working with two different regimes. Nobody wants that, so everything needs to align. But when you're trying to align two governments' processes, that can take a little bit longer.
Gosh, and do you see the right behaviours coming through in terms of the changes being identified, recognised and worked on?
So everybody knows the challenges that we're facing. The key thing is always timing. We are trying to move at pace here, and policy making does not always move at the pace that industry would like to see. So that's our main problem at the moment, that we're just not having this stuff come forward fast enough.
And Morag, one of the challenges I see, in my job is that there's a massive demand in the future from the supply chain.
Yes.
But how do we get from where we are today to the supply chain that we need to deliver ScotWind, Intog and the rest?
Now, if I could give you the answer to that one, I could sell it to many of the people in this room for a lot of money. So it's what we call the chicken and egg problem. The supply chain know that these big contracts are coming, and to be able to service them, they would need to invest now in expanding their facilities and their capacity. But until they've got orders on the books, that's a risk for them, and many of the projects who will want to be placing contracts with them are not at financial investment decisions yet, so can't be placing orders. So again, lots of conversation in the space about how bridging could be done, how there could be risk balancing between suppliers and developers. So an active conversation, no answers on that one yet.
It's really interesting, isn't it? But I've got to say that as a trade body,
Yes.
Scottish Renewables does a great job in bringing people together and bringing these issues to the fore, because It's really important that they be recognised and discussed, right?
Absolutely, and that's one of our key roles, and one of the key strengths actually of working in Scotland. We are of a size where lots of people know each other. We can all get together in this space. You'll recognise many familiar faces here, and again, they're linking in with all the new players in the sector. So it is a key role that we play. This is where industry comes to meet itself, and as you can hear, it's very busy and vibrant.
Brilliant. This is where industry comes to meet, that's for sure. Morag, thank you very much. Really appreciate you talking to me this afternoon.
You're very welcome. Always happy to chat.